Our journey begins in Fort William, one of the largest towns in the Scottish Highlands, before following the Great Glen Way, the geological fault line that slashes across Scotland. It takes us along the Caledonian Canal to Loch Ness, home to the world's most famous mythical monster. Next we pass through Inverness, capital of the Highlands and site of some of Scotland's bloodiest battles, before continuing on to the settlements at the northernmost tip of the British mainland. After crossing the Pentland Firth, we reach the hauntingly beautiful Orkney Islands, glimpsing the mysterious Neolithic monuments that make up a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We end our journey at one of Scotland's most extraordinary natural structures, the tallest sea stack in Britain, the Old Man of Hoy. In the shadow of Britain's tallest peak, Ben Nevis, in the heart of the Highlands, lies the town of Fort William. People have lived here since the 8th century. The surrounding area is famous as the backdrop of the film Braveheart. Today, Fort William is known as the outdoor capital of the UK and is an important tourist centre, particularly for climbers of nearby Ben Nevis. It's from here we begin our journey along one of the world's greatest waterways, the Caledonian Canal. It cleverly combines bold engineering with Scotland's natural landscape, linking the lochs into a single waterway. This section of the canal leads us over Loch Lochy, long, straight and set amidst rolling hills. Not to be outdone by its famous neighbour Loch Ness, Lochy also has a monster, the river horse. It emerges when it's time to feed on the shores. If bothered, the creature plunges back into the loch, where it overturns boats and leads other horses into the waters to their doom. Today, the most commonly found animal in Loch Lochy is fish, particularly trout, for which fishermen travel from all over the world. We now move to the green floodplains en route to Loch Oich. It may be a picture of tranquility now, but in times past it was witness to horrific scenes of violence. It was here in 1544 that the Battle of the Shirts was fought. A vicious clash between 4 separate clans is said to have turned the loch red with the blood of their fallen. These days, the narrow waters of Loch Oich are home to more sedate activities. Surrounded by green woodlands, it teems with fish and wildlife. We continue to nearby Fort Augustus, a picturesque settlement on the shores of Loch Ness. The abbey was once a place for Benedictine monks, but is now a hotel. It's known as the gateway to Loch Ness. Here, a magnificent sequence of lochs leads the Caledonian Canal down and into the lake. Holding more water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined, the magnificent Loch Ness is the largest of all the lakes on our journey. It is 230 metres at its deepest point and over 36 kilometres long. It's best known, the world over, for being the watery lair of the legendary Loch Ness Monster. The first recorded sighting of the beast was in 565 AD. St. Columba, an Irish priest, claims to have prevented the monster from attacking a villager by raising his cross and shouting, "Stop! Go thou no further, nor touch the man." Since then, Nessie has been more circumspect in her appearances. The mystery, though, lives on. Each year, millions of people come in the hope of catching a glimpse of the Loch Ness Monster. On the banks stands the famous Castle Urquhart. A fort has stood here for over 1,500 years. Today, it is only a ruin. In the 14th century, Castle Urquhart came under the control of Robert the Bruce as he rose to become King of Scots. When he died in 1332, this was the only Highland castle holding out against the English. Amongst its remnants, the Grant Tower still stands, giving panoramic views out across the loch. In 2011, more than 300,000 people visited the fortress, making it one of the most popular tourist sites in Scotland. Loch Ness makes up just one section of a 97-kilometre waterway that cuts through the heart of the Highlands, linking the North Sea with the Atlantic. Considered a miracle of 19th century engineering, the Caledonian Canal project set out to connect these magnificent lochs. Work began in 1803 and was masterminded by the great engineer Thomas Telford. It was planned to take 7 years to complete and would be one of Britain's biggest ever building projects. In the early 19th century, without machines, digging with picks and shovels was back-breaking work. 19 years later, and having spent almost double Telford's estimate, a staggering $70 billion in today's money, the canal finally opened for business. But by then, many of the cargo ships of the day were too big to pass along the waterway. Yet, in 1873, the canal found another calling when it was visited by Queen Victoria. The publicity surrounding her trip caused a huge increase in visitors to the region. Today, the Caledonian Canal, with its breathtaking scenery, is visited each year by over 500,000 tourists, many of whom take the chance to enjoy the 3-day cruise along its length. Our route along the canal ends here, at Inverness, the capital of the Highlands. It's home to over 65,000 people. Considered a vital part of the Scottish economy, here traditional industries like distilleries rub shoulders with high-tech firms and creative companies. In the heart of the city is the Cathedral Church of St Andrew. It was supposed to be topped by a 30-metre spire, but funds ran out and it was left unfinished. The Kessock Bridge links the city of Inverness with the village of North Kessock. From here, on a good day, it's sometimes possible to spot dolphins. We continue on to the Moray Firth, where the fresh waters of the Great Glen Way run out into the North Sea. Close by, occupying a commanding strategic position, is Fort George. It's the finest example of 18th century military engineering in the British Isles. Behind these vast walls are garrison buildings, parade grounds, and artillery defences bristling with cannons. To defend the keep, there's a large dry moat with a drawbridge, making enemies vulnerable to gunfire from the walls. The fort was built to help put down the Jacobite rebellions against the British king. But by the time the construction was complete, the fighting was over. No shot in anger has ever been fired. Instead, the fort became a recruiting base and a training camp for the rapidly expanding British Army. Many Highland soldiers passed through its gates on their way to fight for the Empire across the globe. The architecture of the fortress has hardly been changed since it was built. Today it's home to the famous Scottish infantry regiment, the Black Watch. Our journey now takes us out to sea and to this jack-up oil rig. The oil and gas industry is vital to the area and to the wider UK economy. Centred in Aberdeen, the North Sea oil industry delivers almost half of Britain's energy needs. As the most accessible reserves dwindle, drillers are beginning to explore smaller fields in remote locations using new techniques. This is helping to make Scotland an international centre for cutting-edge engineering firms. The oil and gas industry currently employs some 60,000 offshore personnel. Work is tough and hours are long, but the pay isn't that bad, with an average salary that's well over $100,000 a year. We move now over the Black Isle to the Cromarty Firth and the magnificent bridge of the same name. The kilometre-long span opened in 1979 to replace the ferry service. The only other option before its construction was to drive a long route inland to get to the other side. Close by, on the edge of the beautiful Dornoch Firth, we find ourselves in one of the most exclusive locations in Scotland, Skibo Castle. Amidst 30 square kilometres of magnificent grounds, a castle has stood here in one form or another for around 900 years. Rebuilt, modified and extended many times in that period, it was bought in the early 20th century as a summer home by industrialist Andrew Carnegie. He had been born to a working-class single-room household in Scottish Dunfermline before emigrating to America. By 1902, he returned to Scotland, the richest man in the world, determined to spend his fortune as a philanthropist. The castle stayed in the hands of the Carnegie family until the 1980s. Today it's operated as the Carnegie Club, a members-only hotel and private country resort. Over the years, it's welcomed many well-known personalities, particularly when it hosted Madonna's wedding to Guy Ritchie in the year 2000. The grounds include the artificial Lake Louise. It's one of only a few bodies of water in Scotland known as lakes. Also on the estate are 12 family lodges and a recently restored bathhouse with a swimming pool and spa. Perhaps most astonishing is that the castle sits amidst its own 18-hole golf course, which remains private. Only 3,000 rounds are played on this links course each year. The 17th hole is considered particularly tricky, with deep bunkers around the front of the green. But no matter how you fare, you'll be serenaded back to the castle with your very own Scottish bagpiper, in time for a gourmet dinner. Our journey now seems to take us into a fairy tale picture book as we reach Dunrobin Castle. With its turrets and spires, the rambling, ramshackle fortress has been home to the Earls and Dukes of Sutherland since the 13th century. In Gaelic, the name Dunrobin means Robin's Hill, and may have come from Robert, the 6th Earl of Sutherland, who died in 1427. During World War I, this place was used as a naval hospital. In 1915, a fire broke out. It's said that the damage would have been much worse had a crew from a nearby naval ship not rushed ashore to form a bucket chain to the sea to tackle the fire. The formal gardens were carefully laid out in 1850 by architect Sir Charles Barry, best known for the Houses of Parliament in London. Designed around two circular pools with fountains, Barry said his inspiration was the Palace of Versailles near Paris. Heading north, we pass through the Northern Highlands, a land of stark, bleak beauty. Teetering high on a cliff edge over Sinclair Bay, we find Keith Castle. Over time, the North Sea has eroded most of the foundations. It was built in the 16th century as a country retreat, but soon fell into disrepair. Abandoned in 1755, Keith now stands only as a famous ruin. Cracks continue to grow around the walls, and it's likely that more of the castle will collapse into the sea over the coming years. We've now reached the most northeasterly point of the British mainland, Duncansby Head. Here the Pentland Firth meets the North Sea. The two pyramid-shaped sea stacks that jut from the water like teeth are called the Duncansby Stacks. The Great Stack is over 60 metres high, higher than the summit of the nearby cliff. Being so close to Norway, this place was the scene of a number of sea and air clashes during the Second World War. Today, the sea stacks are a more sedate place, home to a variety of rare birds, including colonies of guillemots, razorbills, and puffins. Nearby, and amongst the most famous place names in Britain, John O'Groats is the end of many a sponsored walk, run, and charity bike ride. But the town is largely famous for a mistake. Often thought to be the most northerly point of the British mainland, it's not. That distinction goes to Dunnet Head Lighthouse, which stands heroically at the very point at which the Atlantic Ocean meets the North Sea. Beyond Britannia, where the endless ocean opens, lies Orkney. So said Orosius, the Portuguese priest in the 5th century. And following in his wake, our journey now takes us some 15 kilometres to that very place, the Orkneys, an archipelago of 70 islands. Bounded by 200-metre cliffs and steep, heathery hills is Rackwick Bay Beach on the island of Hoy. A turquoise cove set against these dramatic hills, it's one of Orkney's iconic sights. It was this landscape that so inspired the work of George Mackay Brown, considered to be one of the greatest Scottish poets of the 20th century. And it's easy to see why. Further down the beach is Rackwick Bothy, once the home of smallholders and fishermen who grafted a living from the land and sea. This restored croft is now a place where walkers, climbers, and visitors can find shelter. Our journey now takes us to the origins of the Orkney Islands, a place shrouded in age and mystery. Here, in the centre of mainland, is the burial chamber of Maes Howe. It dates from the Neolithic period around 2700 BC. Amazingly, the chamber is designed so that during the winter solstice, the last rays of the midwinter sun shine directly through the entrance passage to light the rear wall of the central room. Today, Maes Howe is one of the monuments that make up the UNESCO World Heritage Site, the heart of Neolithic Orkney. Nearby is the Ring of Brodgar, a relative newcomer having been built a few hundred years later, around 2000 BC. The stone circle is 104 metres in diameter. Originally made up of 60 stones, 27 still stand. Nobody knows for certain what the ring was for. Perhaps a shrine to ancestors, a temple to the sun, or an observatory of the stars. Local legend has it that the stones were a group of dancing giants who grew so absorbed by their party they forgot about the rising sun and were turned to stone by the dawn light. Unusual for such an ancient monument is its true circularity. It's considered to be one of the most finely crafted stone circles in the world. Moving further along the rugged west coast of Orkney's mainland, we see how the landscape has been shaped by the relentless pounding of the waves. It's a place in constant motion. Cliff faces are fast eroded, and the land is quickly carved out by the roiling sea. But the force of the ocean isn't only destructive. Skara Brae had been buried and forgotten for millennia before a violent storm in 1850 tore away a high dune to reveal the outline of ancient buildings. Older than Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids, and the Great Wall of China, Skara Brae is unique for its extraordinary degree of preservation. The 8 homes are built of closely fitting flat stone slabs. Each is accessed through a low entrance and has a stone floor that could be closed and bolted. The village has a drainage system and even a primitive lavatory in each dwelling. Extraordinarily, the furniture of these Neolithic people, stone beds and dressers, has survived intact. Today, Skara Brae stands as a testament to the tenacity of early man in his willingness to settle in such a wild and isolated place. We continue now to our final destination. At 137 metres tall, the Old Man of Hoy is Britain's tallest sea stack. With the relentless pounding of nature's forces, the changes in the shape can be traced through the centuries in maps and paintings. In 1750, the Old Man was part of the headland, jutting out from the shore. At a later time, the sea carved out an arch at the base, making it appear the stack had 2 crooked legs, giving him his name. A storm, though, washed away one of his limbs, leaving the pillar that remains. The future will almost certainly bring about the Old Man's collapse. There's already a 40-metre crack from the peak of the stack that threatens to bring down its top section. But until then, the Old Man of Hoy refuses to return to the sea, unsurprising perhaps in this, one of the most resilient landscapes in the world, and a dramatic place to end this journey.